boats, motorcycles, and RVs. Get a quote in as little as 3 minutes at 1-800-PROGRESSIVE and Progressive.com. Time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wallets. This is an aberration. Ladies and gentlemen, a miracle is about to take place right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Something that is about to happen that has never, ever, ever happened in my history of doing radio. Ever. Ever. And do you know what that is? Do you know what that is? I'm about to lead my show about the New York Mets. The New York Mets, who I openly and unapologetically don't give a damn about, because they're the Mets. They are not the Yankees. They are not winners like the Yankees are. And I'm a native of Queens, New York. I grew up 15 minutes from the old Chase Stadium before it became Citibank Field. I don't give a damn about the Mets. I leave that to Don Juan LaGreca. For those of you in Nationwide who may not know who that is, Don Juan LaGreca is an absolutely fabulous radio host, partnering with Michael K on the Michael K Show every weekday in New York City. And Don Juan LaGreca knows his hockey, too. The only thing I know about hockey is that the puck is black. That's about it, and it's played on ice. I don't know a damn thing about hockey, okay? But when it comes to these Mets, I know this much, they ain't the Yankees. I know that for a third consecutive year, they've missed the postseason. I know that Mickey Callaway has just been fired as the manager for the Mets, despite going 77-85 last year, improving by 9 games to 86-76 this year, being a manager that was exiled after recording a winning record in that particular season. Van Wagenen, the general manager for the New York Mets, clearly wants to move in a different direction, put his own prints on the franchise. He came a year after Mickey Callaway was hired as manager. That's not his choice. He stomached it for this season. Now he's gone. Now he's gone. I got to say this. I feel bad for Mickey Callaway. I do. Brody Van Wagenen, executive VP and GM, deciding to let this man go. Look, let me say this. We all know Pete Alonso was a stud as a rookie, 53 home runs, which was a record, 120 RBIs. The kid was absolutely fabulous. I know you brought on Robinson Cano, who spent most of the year injured. I got news for you. With the money he's making, 13 home runs, 39 RBIs, and 107 games with a 256 batting average, that ain't selling nothing. Rosario and Todd Frazier and J.D. Davis and these boys, I get it. You got some respectable talent. Conforto as well. Let's not forget him and his 33 home runs. Mickey Callaway did not do an awful job. The Mets, who we determined long ago was a practical wasteland en route to nowhere, resurrected their season. And for a time, the Mets were the best story in baseball. They really were. They were absolutely fabulous. But sustainability matters. And they didn't have that capability. And as a result, they're moving on. And by the way, as much as I respect Mickey Callaway for the job that he did, they're moving on at the right time, because I'm here to tell you, looking at my producer extraordinaire, Jonathan Winthrop, looking at my man, JC, let me tell y'all something right now. When you look at some of the candidates out there, I don't mind. I really, really don't mind. I'm here to tell you right now. You got Joe Madden, who just got let go by the Cubs. Although he did so at a press conference with a glass of wine, it seemed. Very relaxed and cool with the decision. You got Joe Girardi and Buck Showalter out there. Established, bona fide managers. We all know what they bring to the table. Me personally, I like a Joe Girardi. As much as I love and appreciate the job that Aaron Boone has done for the New York Yankees, and there is no question at this particular juncture, considering his relationship and the way he's cultivated those relationships with the Yankees, he's the right man for the job, and he deserves our credit and our respect, particularly as a former colleague here at ESPN. I love Aaron Boone. Love the job that he's done. But it doesn't mean that I was happy to see Joe Girardi leave. Because I think Joe Girardi's a hell of a manager. And I think one of the first things the Mets should do is pick up the phone and call him. Buck Showalter, not so much. I know he's great. I know his knowledge of baseball is impeccable. I get all of that, but I can't forget how pathetically awful the Baltimore Orioles were in his last year there. That's just me, John. That's just me. That's just me. I'm a Joe Girardi kind of guy. And I guess one could argue, after managing the New York Yankees for so many years in the Bronx, talk about a step down going all the way to going over to Queens, the coach to manage the Mets. I don't know. And if that's not a job that he wants, I respect that. Maybe Joe Girardi can end up in Chicago. Maybe he could do that. That way we don't have to worry about whether or not Joe Girardi is massaging egos or is he sabotaging young players because he's so stoic and hardcore and principled in so many ways, which certainly isn't a bad thing. That might not be something the younger generation gravitates to, whereas with the Chicago Cubs, it ain't necessarily the younger generation anymore. These ain't puppies. You got some experienced dudes on that squad. Maybe Joe Girardi is what the Chicago Cubs need. If I'm Joe Madden, some people say the San Diego Padres is the best job for him to take. As far as I'm concerned, if I got an opportunity to manage Mike Trout, I'm going to probably do that. San Diego or Anaheim, either should work for Joe Madden. But to me, Joe Girardi should be New York or Chicago. Buck Showalter, I don't know. I just don't know. Because you can lose with him. And I'm not saying it's his fault. It's not like the man don't know what he's doing. It's not like the man hasn't had a relatively exceptional career. But I will remind everybody. Last time I saw him, excuse me. Last time I saw Buck Showalter managing a team, the man was 47 and 115. I'm going to repeat that. I understand how bad the Orioles were. I understand that's not his fault. In 4 years with the New York Yankees, he won 53% of his games. In 3 years with the Arizona Diamondbacks, he won 51% of his games. In 4 years with the Texas Rangers, he won 49% of his games. And the Baltimore Orioles, the same. This man was a manager in Major League Baseball for 20 years and never won more than 53% of his games. I don't know about the rest of y'all. I don't need that if I'm the Mets. At the end of the day, we don't know what Buck Showalter knows. But we do know your record. And if your record is what your record is, ain't no way around it. Period. Once won 100 games with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Didn't do anything in the postseason. We got to call it like we see it, do we not? 20 years as a manager. Never won more than 53% of his games, and that was only once. If I'm the Mets, I need something different than that. I just do, ladies and gentlemen. I just do. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Just read it from the reports here. Remember, Girardi was my number one choice. Reading off of SNY, it said months ago, they reported the Mets have done background work on a former Yankees manager. The team has expressed private concerns about Girardi's sometimes tense demeanor with players in the media, but are drawn to his skill, intelligence, and experience. Girardi wants to manage again and would consider the Mets. Okay. Then there's Buck Showalter, reading from SNY, Andy Martino, to be exact. Buck Showalter, a brilliant and polarizing figure in the game, has supporters and detractors in the Mets organization. Some folks are impressed by Showalter's charisma and instincts. Others wonder how collaborative he can be. Expect him to be on a list of potential candidates. So I was right about those two. Luis Rojas. The Mets quality control coach is seen as a promising managerial prospect. Some influential folks in the organization believe he is not quite ready and should be a bench coach. Excuse me. A quality control coach should not be elevated to a manager in the media capital world. Hell no. He needs to wait or go someplace else, get the experience, and then come back to the Mets as a manager. Mike Matheny. Remember the former manager for the St. Louis Cardinals? Here's what they say about him. While several folks in the game have noted that Matheny and Fred Wilpon are closer than people realize because of their University of Michigan connection, Matheny is widely expected to be the next manager of the Kansas City Royals. He is tightly wound and might struggle in New York still because of the connection his name could arise in the Mets process. I will say this. I had the pleasure of interviewing Mike Matheny one time. I only met him once. I don't know anything about him compared to what folks who actually cover the sport of baseball know. But I would tell you this. He certainly didn't strike me as tightly wound up. I tell you that. He seemed like a relatively personable dude. Maybe it was because he was there to promote a book. I don't know. But he seemed to have a nice personality. Seemed pretty cool to me. So I don't know that tightly wound stuff, how accurate that is. Then there's A.J. Hinch. Remember, Astros manager. They're favored to win the World Series with that rotation. Led by Verlander, Cole, Greinke. I can't see anybody beating them, even though the Yankees supposedly are very, very confident. But this Astros manager apparently is Brodie Van Wagenen's close friend, and industry speculation has swirled for months that the Mets might try to trade for him. This one is likely to remain an interesting rumor, though. Folks familiar with the situation say that while Hinch might be ready for a new challenge, a managerial trade or a manager trade would be simply too complicated and too much of a long shot. Here's where I tell you it should be a long shot. John, JC, let me tell you something. Do you have any idea what should happen to a manager for the Astros who would think about leaving to take the Mets job? That person should be drug tested immediately. Immediately. If A.J. Hinch was to leave the Astros to go and take over the New York Mets coaching job, she should be psychologically tested. Something is definitely wrong with him. Oh, by the way, David Cone, former Major League Baseball pitcher, former Met and current broadcaster, also has a desire to manage. He's let that be known. I mean, after all, once Aaron Boone did it with the New York Yankees, why not do it if you're David Cone? He is deeply conversant in analytics and an affable communicator. The Mets likely prefer experience, but Cone could represent an Aaron Boone-type moonshot. All right, I like that. Worth consideration. Bruce Bochy, a legend, last year in San Francisco. That's what this past season was. If the Giants legend decides to unretire for 2020, word is the Mets won't see him as a fit. Understood. Joe Madden, friends of the ousted Cubs skipper, expect him to become the next manager of the Angels. Let me guess. Pete Alonso or Mike Trout. I love Alonso. Love him. Proud of the job he did this year. 53 home runs, 53 home runs. He ain't no Mike Trout. Let us be clear. He ain't no Mike Trout. That's a bad brother right there. So all of those things are things to consider. My money, I'd bet it if they know what they're doing over there in Queens. I would bet my money on Joe Girardi being the next manager for the New York Mets. Or at least having the option to accept the job or not accept the job. That's just me. I mean, after all, he was a Yankee for all those years. He does have a winning pedigree. He does know a little thing or two about winning, which the boys in Queens should want to be infected by. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. There's also a Thursday night football game coming up. Seattle Seahawks will be hosting the Los Angeles Rams. And there are a couple of thoughts that I think are coming to mind. First things first, I personally owe Russell Wilson an apology. Because while we've been sitting here marveling at the greatness of Patrick Mahomes, and for a couple of weeks marveling at the improvement of a Lamar Jackson from last year to this year, and in the process that of Dak Prescott as well, we forgot that there's a particular quarterback in the NFC playing better than anybody in the conference. His name would happen to be Russell Wilson. Completing nearly 73% of his passes, 72.9 to be exact. Throwing for over 1,100 yards. Throwing 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. The Seahawks are 3-1, and Russell Wilson is clearly leading the way. What the hell is there to talk about? How do we have these conversations and we don't include Russell Wilson in the mix, considering his level of flagrant greatness? At some point in time, when are we going to give this brother the respect and the love that he deserves? When are we going to do that? When are we going to do that? We need to stop. We need to get our act together. And we need to do a better job of giving this brother the praise that he deserves. Now, we're going to find out a thing or two tonight. But it's going to be mainly about these Los Angeles Rams. The weather is expected to be a little cold, obviously raining in Seattle, as it usually does. And because of that reality, you got issues. We understand that. We truly do. Okay? But because of that, you shouldn't see too much throwing of the football. That's A. B, you should expect more running, particularly when Seattle just ran the football effectively against the Arizona Cardinals this past week. So let's make sure we're clear about that, okay? If you're the Seahawks, you want to run the football. That's what you want to do. You want to figure out a way to get it done against these Los Angeles Rams. And why wouldn't you? If you're the Seahawks, just think about what you've been doing. Last 3 weeks, 151, 108, 115 yards rushing. You're getting back into your identity. And that's what we got to remember when it comes to Seattle. Meanwhile, have you seen the Rams? Have you seen the Rams? See, what's going to make things interesting is that if you are going up against the Rams, who gave up 55 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last weekend, what are you going to do? Last week, they let Tampa throw for 376 yards, passing. After giving up 127 yards on the ground in game 1, they haven't given up 100 yards on the ground against New Orleans, Cleveland, or Tampa. That much is true. But when you look at the Los Angeles Rams, their problem is offense. Because even though Jared Goff threw for over 500 yards and 2 touchdowns last week, he also threw 3 interceptions. Not only did he throw 3 interceptions, not only was that bad enough, let's also remember the fact that he threw the ball 68 times. Let's also remember the fact they're not running the damn football. The Rams ran for a total of 90 yards on the ground against Cleveland and a total of 28 yards on 11 carries last week against Tampa. How you going to throw the ball 68 times and just run it 11 times and expect that to be good for you? Somehow, some way, McVay and those boys going to have to figure it out. I think because this is a short week, and the game is in Seattle, where noise and that raucous crowd will obviously be a factor. I think it's going to be too much for the Rams to overcome. And I think that the Seahawks find a way to win this game. Because the reality is I believe in Russell Wilson more than I believe in Jared Goff. I just do. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Let's get right to it before we go to break. Let's go to Sean. You're live with Stephen A. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Stephen A. I've been a lifelong Mets fan, and watching them do anything has been an exercise in futility. Mickey Callaway was ill-equipped to manage. He came in as a pitching expert, couldn't handle the bullpen for anything, couldn't handle the offense for anything or the starting pitching. If the Mets know what they're doing, they're going to hire someone with experience like Girardi or Showalter, not some newbie like Joe Espada from Houston or their quality control coach.
Okay, well, who would you prefer?
I'd prefer Girardi or even Bruce Bochy.
Well, Bruce Bochy retired, and I doubt he'll come out of retirement to manage the Mets. That's just my personal opinion. I have no knowledge whatsoever, but my personal opinion is that I find it hard-pressed to believe he'll come out of retirement to manage the Mets. I think Girardi would be a better shot. I'll tell you this, too. This dude, Jacob deGrom, when y'all going to get worried about wasting away his best years? When is somebody in the Mets land going to get worried about wasting away his best years? He's 31 years old. He's got an ERA under 3. I mean, when you look at what he does and what he brings to the table, he's absolutely fantastic. When are you going to get him some help? When are you going to do that? How do you sit up there in a straight face and waste away the career of an ace like this? When are you going to do something? Boy, I wish the Yankees had gotten him. I really, really do. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. We'll get to your calls and more in a minute, so don't touch that dial. You're listening live to Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Back with your calls and more in a minute. By the way, head to the